You've spent quite a bit of time writing about America's education system. What's happened to it, in your view?
Well, I think that there's several things that have happened that has not been that don't portend, for the good of the system. I think one has been the gross monopolization of education in our country. I believe the number is around 1950. There were 52,000 school districts in our country. Today, there are about 13,000 school districts. So there's been massive consolidation. I don't think that that's good for our system. And then I think that there are fewer accountability standards, both for students and both for educators. That is, we see that teachers and principals, they get pay raises and promotions, whether the kids can read or write, and the kids get their diplomas, whether they can read or write. And I think a startling condemnation for the school system is the fact that incoming freshmen in college, they're not ready for college. I think something close to 50% have to take remedial education either in reading, writing, or mathematics. And that's saying that the public schools, they're issuing fraudulent diplomas. That is, they're issuing a diploma that certifies that a kid can read and write at 12th grade level when in fact he cannot. I am very happy that I received virtually all of my education before it became fashionable for white people to like black people. Now, what I mean by that is that when I earned a C in high school or in college, that was a real, honest-to-God C that I earned. And when I earned an A, that was a real, honest-to-God A that I earned. Those people did not care about the legacy of discrimination. They didn't care about my handicaps of being poor. They held me up to standards. And I think that that is very good. And I think that many students, both black and white, are not held up to high standards. For example, in my junior high school, one of our assignments was to write a 3-page essay. And I received my essay back from the teacher on 2 occasions, torn into 4 pieces with a little note on top of it. At least you could spell correctly, rewrite. And so, but if a teacher did that today, the teacher might be in a lot of trouble because she might be hurting the kids' feelings of self-esteem. Well, when I was going to school, teachers didn't give a damn about my self-esteem.
In fact, in your book, Up From the Projects, your autobiography, you write about it. Dr. Rosenberg, I believe it was?
Yes.
One of your teachers?
Yes. He was my English teacher in high school, and I thought very highly of him. But and he used to come to school early, and he taught us college tutorial English. That is, those kids who he saw that had some college potential, they would arrive at 7 o'clock in the morning, and he would drill us on English topics and grammar. Anyway, one day in class, what he had the habit of doing, or one of his teaching techniques, was to write a sentence on the board and have one of the students correct the sentence. And so one day he wrote a sentence on the board, and a student found the error in the sentence, and he was about ready to erase the sentence on the board. And I raised my hand, and I said, Dr. Rosenberg, there's another error. And he looked at it, and he says, what is it, Williams? I said, well, there's lack of agreement between the subjective object of the verb to be. And so he said, very, very good. You're very, very alert this morning. And so I said to my friend sitting beside me, I said, here I'm paying taxes for the teachers that teach me, and I had to teach them. And he heard me. He just went into a tirade. He said, Williams, teaching you this material is like casting pearls before the swine. He said, you're never going to be anything. He was really frustrated with me, and legitimately so, because I was a kind of clown in class. But his addressing me that way was the first real challenge that I had in high school, and I ultimately graduated salutatorian second in my class. But I needed that kind of dressing down. Can you imagine what would happen to a white teacher saying the same things to a black kid today that Dr. Rosenberg said to me, he'd be kicked out of the school. I mean, he'd be called a racist. He'd be condemned for not caring enough about the kids' feelings of self-esteem.
This is from a column in 1997 that you wrote. For years, I've said that if the Ku Klux Klan wanted to sabotage black academic excellence, they couldn't find a tool more effective than the public school systems in most major cities. You were going to junior high at about the time of Brown versus Board of Education, correct?
High school, yes.
High school. Did that affect you at all? Did that change your classes?
No, it didn't. I went to a predominantly black school in North Philadelphia. And matter of fact, it was Benjamin Franklin High School. And at the time, Benjamin Franklin High School was the lowest rated school in the city. It was in North Philadelphia, predominantly black and low income area. But however, if you can imagine a time tunnel and you could pull Benjamin Franklin from 1954 up to today, then Benjamin Franklin would be probably one of the highest rated schools in the city of Philadelphia. And that's the reason why, is that standards, educational standards have plummeted so much. Now my statement about the Ku Klux Klan, I've often said that if you wanted to sabotage any chance of black academic excellence, you couldn't find a better way than the public school system in most cities. And what we do see, and that most Americans are unaware of, and particularly black Americans are unaware of, that is the average black high school graduate or the average black high school 12th grader, he has the reading, writing, math, and civics knowledge of the average white 7th or 8th grader. I mean, that is a devastating statistic. That is where a majority of blacks, they graduate from high school with a grossly fraudulent diploma. Now, the quality of education that white students get is nothing to write home about. That is because the standards are very, very low. That is, according to recent National Assessment of Educational Progress statistics for 2015, I think that's only 30 or 40% of white students score proficient in reading and math. But for blacks, it's 7% score proficient in math, and I think like 10% score proficient in reading.
Where do you see the why those disparities in results?
Well, there are probably a number of reasons. One has to do with the education system in general, but I think that one of the things that we have to recognize is that there are many inputs that go into education, and if some of the inputs aren't there, it doesn't make any difference on how much money you spend on education. Education would not occur. In other words, what I'm saying is that for a kid to do well in school, somebody must make sure that the kid is in bed by 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Somebody must get him up in the morning and get him to breakfast. Somebody must make sure he arrives at school on time. Somebody must make sure he does his homework. And somebody must make sure that he minds the teachers. If that is not done, I don't care how much money that you put into educational budget, education will not occur unless those things are done. And if you ask the question, well, can politicians do those things? Can the President of the United States make sure a kid is in bed on time? Can a mayor or can a congressman or a senator? No. That is, you need a parent. And by the way, I think you need two parents. At UCLA, that's where I went to graduate school. One has to, in order to get a PhD, one has to take a theory exam and 3 other areas. And when I took the theory exam, 16 students took it and 14 flunked. And I was among the ones that flunked. And they have it was about 2 professors sit down with you after the exam, and they decide whether to kick you out of the program. One of my professors told me, he says, Walter, your exam was among the worst, but we think you can do much, much better. And so they gave me reading assignments. I had to come to their office and discuss the journal articles. And sometimes I come to the office and they say, Williams, you just said such and such. That's nonsense. Come again read it again and come again next week. And maybe the next week or next time I came, I felt very, very good. They say, oh, perfect. And then when I took the exam again, I passed it. And so they didn't give a damn about the legacy of slavery or discrimination or my hard my hard life, but they held me accountable to standards that they held every other student, and that is respectful. That is, if they say, well, look, Williams, there's slavery, there's discrimination, blah 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 blah. We're not going to have you live up to the standards of white people. We're going to have a special standard for you, one that's lower. That would have been insulting, and that would not have helped me in the long run. I'm a better economist as a result of their holding me to the standards they held to other students.
Dr. Williams' books over the years. The State Against Blacks came out in 1982. America, A Minority Viewpoint, also in 1982. All It Takes Is Guts, 1987. South Africa's War Against Capitalism, 1989. Do the Right Thing, The People's Economist Speaks. More Liberty Means Less Government, 1997. Liberty versus the Tyranny of Socialism came out in 2008. Up from the Projects, an autobiography, came out in 2010. Race and Economics, How Much Can Be Blamed on Discrimination, came out in 2011. And his latest collection came out this year, American Contempt for Liberty.